Frank Lloyd Wright was an American architect and interior designer who designed more than 1,000 projects. Wright promoted organic architecture exemplified by falling water, the home built in the middle of a Pennsylvania creek bed. His work included original and innovative examples of many different building types, including a home built for John Christian and his wife in West Lafayette, Indiana.
How did we first meet Frank Lloyd Wright? We met after I made a telephone conversation to his office in 1950, and I was surprised he himself answered the phone because he had 3 secretaries and over 50 young apprentices working for him. He was always very gracious, accommodating. You understand that we met him first in 1950, and by this time he's 83 years old. So he perhaps has mellowed somewhat. Anyway, we found him very enjoyable to work with, and we often went up to his home in Taliesin, Spring Green, Wisconsin. And he and his wife were wonderful hosts and hostess.
After interviewing Mr. Wright and several other architects in Chicago, the Christians decided Wright was their man. It was time to move ahead with plans for the house.
We told him that we were not in any hurry for the plans. He took that to heart because it's 5 years before we got any plans from Mr. Wright. He very consciously requested us to prepare a document indicating what we thought we wanted in our home. And he took that, plus our conversations with him over that 5-year period, and designed the house. He's very accommodating in listening to our suggestions.
But like most married couples just starting out, what the Christians wanted and what they could afford were 2 different things.
He soon learned in our discussions, of course, that we had limited funds. And he said, I will design you what he called an affordable house. What he thought was affordable wasn't necessarily what the clients thought was affordable. It's built in what he named the Usonian style. The Usonians were designed to be affordable, and they are relatively smaller, and he called them Usonian, which means United States of North America.
Mr. Wright often named his projects, like Eagle Feather in California and Snowflake in Michigan. The West Lafayette, Indiana property was no exception.
Mr. Wright named the house Samara, S-A-M-A-R-A, and most people don't know what that means. And we didn't either. We were sort of embarrassed. He asked us, and we had to tell him we didn't know. He said, well, maybe you better look it up, because it's going to be the name of your new home. It's named after the winged seeds that come from pine cones. And he then used that. He made an artistic drawing of his concept of what a winged seed in motion looked like, and used that throughout the house as the motif. You see it in the living room rug, right down here on the floor.
Even though Mr. Christian still lives in the house, with proper arrangements, tours are available.
Mostly, people that visit are highly interested in his innovative architectural designs. For example, here in this room, the living room, there are over 40 of his innovations. For example, the heat is in the floor. It's called radiant heat, and it's accomplished by copper pipes embedded in the concrete, and you circulate warm water, which heats the floor, and the floor then becomes the source of heat for the space. He innovated what we call mitered glass corners. The glass is beveled into 45-degree angles and then sealed together. And so it opens up the space to the outside. As far as we know, it's the only house that he designed where he worried about where the TV would be and how it would work. We had to tell him we didn't have a TV, that we were saving our money to build the house. And he liked that. And he said, well, you will have. He said, you'll have 2 or 3 of them. And I look around this room and you wonder, where is the TV? It's not visible. In Mr. Wright's words, he said, the TV should be hidden when it's not in use because it's architecturally terrible. Doesn't fit in with my architecture. Should be hidden. And standing behind his desk, he very emotionally said, if you want to see where the TV is, then you have to throw up your arms and say, open sesame. So when I threw up my arm, we'll all say, open sesame. Let's try it. Open sesame. Well, I didn't hear very much. Wasn't very loud. Let's do it now like a bunch of 10-year-olds. Okay? Let's try it. Open sesame. Now here he is. Mr. Wright is 88 years old. He's worrying about the TV, where it should be, and how it should work. And we don't even have one. That's innovation.
Mr. Wright's designs were known to include items down to the finest detail.
He designed all the furniture and almost every other detail you see in the house. He designed the fabrics. The fabrics were all his design. He designed the lights, and he even designed the landscaping. This is considered to be the only house that has a copper fascia all around the roof line of the house. It's a three-dimensional takeoff of his Samara design. And because it's three-dimensional, it casts shadows all the way around the house, which then gives different shapes, geometric shapes on the ground. As the sun moves, the shadows move.
Although the relationship the Christians had with Mr. Wright seemed to move the building process along, there were differences along the way.
My favorite story about Mr. Wright involves this room. I had gotten the final plans, and we had just been married, had limited resources, which you understand means we didn't have any money. I studied the plans over and over again, trying to figure out how I could afford to build this house. And I got the idea that I could cut 4 feet off this living room. So I telegrammed him and asked him if he could do that. And he telegrammed back, and he said, I've never yet seen a living room too large. Yours, if anything, is too small. That was his answer. Frank Lloyd Wright.
Even with those differences, the Christians realized the significance of working with Frank Lloyd Wright as their architect.
We began to realize very early on that here was a man that was considered by many as the world's greatest architect. And that must be true because he himself said he was the world's greatest architect. Sort of egotistical, but he always said that. And so we decided at that time that we would follow his plans with the greatest detail that we possibly could, because we felt that it might have historic significance, which it does now. It's recognized on the National Register of Historic Places.
So after a lifetime of living in their Wright-designed home, the Christians found a way to ensure its maintenance and legacy well into the future.
My wife and I set up a tax-exempt corporation. That corporation will eventually own the house. And written into the bylaws, their obligation will be, first of all, to maintain the house, because if it's not maintained, it won't be useful for anything. And the second objective is to continue the educational program that we have started. And that's now been in operation for 18 years. And we know it works, and quite comfortable with what will happen to the house in the future. It will be maintained and the program continued ad infinitum, who knows, maybe 100 or more years.